Yeah, so good. Okay. So I invited the esteemed Emily Burford to join us this morning. Um, and I actually have a particular reason for inviting Emily to for this session on comps and CMAs. Um, I think realtors tend to not always be the greatest with details. And I think Emily is the opposite of that. I think she is so incredible at the details, her systems and processes. One time when she first joined Platt, she was so kind to sit down with me and walk me through some of the different systems and processes she has set up. And I was blown away by the attention to detail and the care she gives to her clients through her paying attention to details. So sorry, not to talk you up a ton, but I think Emily is the perfect person to kind of walk you guys through her system and her process for pulling comps. And I know some of you guys have been around for a while, so some of this, I don't know, I think comps and CMAs is something that you guys should probably take like a lesson on or a class on like quite frequently, because everyone has a different way of doing it. And I think it's just helpful to see a bunch of different perspectives. So without further ado, I'm going to shut up and let Emily steal the show. Em, over to you.
Thanks, Rosie. Thanks for your kind words. I'm excited to be here with everyone. A little background about me. I've been in real estate. I'm coming up on my 5th year, and I've been at Platt for a year, a little over a year. And previous to that, started with a larger brokerage and then started my own brokerage with my business partner. So a lot of what Rosie talks about comes from me having to kind of build everything from the ground up in terms of systems. And so I think that's actually helped me be a better realtor. So comps, I was like, how do I start to address everyone? And what do I really teach you all about comps and how to do comps? And so what I thought I would do is just walk you through my process. Like Rosie said, everybody's going to do them a little bit differently. If you were to ask me which I prefer, I really prefer listings. And so comps are really important to me. So I have like a scribble of notes and kind of I should have done a presentation for you, but I didn't. So I'm going to try and just walk through this, and then I want to answer any specific questions. So I'm not sure if you're on here because you just want to learn how somebody else does comps, if there are specific things that you're having challenges with. Comps are really about relationships to me, and I'll kind of make that connection as well of how to do listing meetings and how you set expectations and those sorts of things as well. But I thought I'd walk you through that process. So one of the first things I have as notes is good comps are the skeleton to a successful deal. I think especially in this time, in this market, so I've been in real estate basically when it's always been a seller's market. And so as we navigate relationships with sellers or potential listings, it's really important to have solid comps that you can stand on for a few reasons. One, I think it shows your expertise. I also think that it helps you set really good expectations with your clients. I often am also looking at comps from a marketing mindset, which is a little bit different than most people would. You might be looking at comps in terms of how am I going to get this deal and present them the best for this client to make sure I'm satisfying their expectations. But for me, I'm really looking at a house and trying to think, how do I back into comps in terms of how am I going to sell this house? And so I'm constantly in that kind of mindset as I'm going through a listing appointment. The other thing I always think about, and I always think, is how am I comping, and then am I checking myself with a buyer's perspective? So if you're anything like me, which I'm guessing that a lot of you guys are, when you have buyers, especially in this market, are trying to get them the home that they want, but also trying to look out for or at least hopefully you're looking out for their financial future to a certain extent, taking into account that, hey, this is a seller's market. They're going to pay a premium for real estate right now. It's kind of no man's land there. But I know for me, it's important that in 5 years from now, my clients who have bought a house, who go to turn around to sell it, again, are like, okay, I understood the market, I understood the risk I was taking in terms of value, and so I still feel good about the purchase that I made. So I'm always kind of thinking about that in the back of my mind as well. Okay. So I thought I'd just walk you through the process. I want to be really, first, I think there's two different ways to do comps. I think when we talk about offering value, your home valuations, it's different than offering comps. So, and this is what I would say. Let's say I get an inquiry online or on Facebook, or somebody calls me and says, "Hey, I'm thinking about, will you put some numbers together for me?" That to me is a valuation where I'm doing kind of a broad swath of a neighborhood, and so forth. I think that that is important to have those as building blocks, but it's probably not going to be how I nail down comps on things. So for me, if somebody asks for a valuation, I'm probably going to, find out where their house is in my board. I'm probably going to do like a 180 quick CMA. And if all of this is foreign to you and you don't know what I'm talking about, by the way, caveat, just type or interrupt me, because I don't want to like speak a language that maybe you're not familiar with. But I'm going to get onto Matrix, and I'm probably going to put in their address and search in the quarter mile. And I'm going to look in the last 180 days, maybe the last 365 days, get some general numbers and give somebody a range and evaluation. Okay. So that's the valuation piece. And then I can kind of go from there to dig down deeper. When I thought I would walk you through kind of my process as I'm prepping for a listing appointment. Is that helpful? Yes. Okay. So, I, to a fault, am a little bit too administrative, and you will understand this later when I share a little bit of what I do, but I think that it helps me, and it especially helped me as I started in real estate. So I get a call from a client, and they say, "Hey, we're thinking about listing our house. We'd like to talk to you and have a listing meeting. We want you to come over and take a look at the property," and so forth. What I'm going to do is ask for their address. I'm also going to ask for them to give me kind of a high level overview of maybe some work that they've done since they purchased the home. Like just kind of a like, "Hey, we put in new floors. We haven't done anything to the house. We've been here this long, whatever." Once I do that, I'm going to start to run numbers. And so, like I said, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the property, and I'm going to look at the property's history itself. It's the only thing I'm going to look at. How much has it changed? Like, what can I learn about the property in general? Like I just had a house with a wood foundation. Well, that impacted value. It's very rare, but like, what are some things that are maybe going to be issues or things that are going to impact value or saleability of a home? I'm also going to I run multiple iterations of comps with different criteria. So the first one I'm going to run is, like I said, the first quarter mile. Just drop it quarter mile, right? All the way around. And I'm going to do probably the last 180 days of pending, active, and sold. Okay. I'm also going to then run, if there's not a lot, usually if there's less than like 8 in a quarter mile, I'm going to run the 365 days, or I'm going to even run it to 730 days. Because what I want to do is kind of see where the neighborhood has been just in general and what the market's been doing.
And
I'm
I
also,
think you just said this, but can you repeat again? How long do you do for like things that have sold in the market? And then is there a difference between sold and pending and stuff?
so when you run a quick CMA, or when you run a listing and you do a quick search in Matrix, you're going to go to the search section, and it's going to be residential quick. And you can go in and select active, pendings, leased, whatever. I'm going to look at what I'm going to do is select active, pendings. Maybe you could do temporarily off market, because that might be an indication of something coming on the market and its value, and then sold. And then underneath that area, you can put how many or within each area, you can put a day, right? So pending within the last 180 days, or I just put pending because it doesn't matter. And then and sold within the last 180 days, or the last 365 days. If you want to go to 2 years, it's 730 days or something like that. I've gone back all the way and looked 5 years, 10 years, like in some, just to see progress, obviously. So I like to get a good feel of the history of the neighborhood. And then you can run those and see. You're also going to want to pick if it's a single family home or if it's a condo, and then ones that are sold, when the lease is in there and that sort of thing. Is that helpful? Do people know what I'm talking about? Give me a nod. Yeah. Okay. So the first one I do is you can put next to the section where you're on the quick search is you can search by how far away from a specific address. So if you start to type the address in, it will map it. And I usually do a 1/4 mile if I'm in like the city limits, if that makes sense. Okay. That's the first thing I do. I then run it for what neighborhood they're in, right? So if they're in Meridian Kessler Terrace,
Hey,
or if they're in Feather Cove. Yeah.
Would you want to pull
Yeah.
up your screen and show us on MyBor?
Yes, I would be delighted to.
Okay.
How do I pull up my screen? Hold on. Yeah, I got it. Hold on. Let me. How am I going to share my, how do I share my screen on this?
So you have the other tab pulled up with MyBor on it, and then go back to Zoom and hit share screen. It's the green button on the bottom.
I see it. Hello, people. I'm ready for you. Okay. Okay, there we go. Can you see it?
Yep, perfect.
Okay, so here's where I'm at. So if I go to Matrix here, this is my front page. I'm going to go to search and I'm going to do residential. You can either go residential quick or residential. It's redundant, but whatever. So what I'm going to do is say active, pending, and sold, and it defaults to 180 days. You guys see that? And then I'm going to do like, let's say we'll do my old address. It just sold. So here's the thing that's tricky is you want to actually type it in to where, do you mean this? Yes, because you want to make sure that that is selected. Single family home for sale. And that's pretty much what I need. So if you look down here, you've got 27 matches. You can click on that. You want to search it. And so then what you have are, now you have to change it because you want to see a bigger view. So you have, there's 27 homes within the 1/4 mile of the house that I just sold that were sold. Okay. I'm going to run that. And then what I do is just do a quick, I select all of it and I do a quick CMA of it. Okay. The quick CMA is going to give you the rundown of what stuff sold for in the last 180 days. The numbers that are really important to me for the most part are going to be what's sold in the averages here, and then the median. Like the median and the average are super close, right? It's important to look at what the maximum, like this is the most that somebody paid per square foot for a house in that. So here's a caveat. Price per square foot is a huge guide for how I do comps. It's not the only thing I use, but when I am going as a buyer's agent to look at something, I'm looking at price per square foot to make sure my buyer's not going to be priced out of an area. And so for me, it needs to be a guide or at least some guardrails for how I'm pricing a home. I will say that, and I can get into this later, I'll talk to you about one of my most recent listings. We were way beyond that, but there was a caveat to that because of the market. So I can get back to that here in a minute. Okay. So this tells you active here's the Haverford's active, right? It's a 145. Here's the pending properties. And then here's the solds here. Okay. So, hold on. I'm not sure what's happening. You are screen sharing. Does that make sense how that's worked?
Yeah, that looks great. Also, Emily, your header on those is incredible.
Oh, you can put that all in. You can put it all in. Thanks.
I know there's a way to do that.
Canvas situation and do that. So what I just showed you, I do, but here's the formula that I typically do. This is kind of my standard operating procedure. I do a 1/4 mile and then I keep the data. I kill some trees maybe, or at least save it and write down some stuff that says like, here's what I know. And then I also do it in terms of, I'll go back and I'll change the criteria to look at like, is it in Maple Lawn or whatever? Let me show you again too. You can You can, hold on, I can't get this thing to move, get away from me. Okay. You can go back and map stuff too. So this is really important. If you go here, it shows you, so this is the quarter mile map, right? Well, I know that this neighborhood usually has the same value from the Monon. It starts to kind of change a little bit between Rosslyn and Primrose, but you can still see that there's value there. I don't know if there tends to, I know that this neighborhood kind of is a little bit different the closer you get to Canterbury. So depending on where my property is. So I'm going to look at neighborhoods too, or like block the neighborhoods. And then I'm also going to look at similar sizes. So I'm going to look at and maybe sort the data by, do the smaller homes come for a higher price than the larger homes do? Like you can see trends and so forth in that. And then I'm going to search for same size, bedrooms, bathrooms, and so forth. This is all prior to me listing. So I go in kind of having an idea. I'm going to look at the pictures too. So stuff that I'm thinking, okay, like if the house is this big and this is kind of the average market, what's the average sale price for those homes right now? I'm going to go look at homes that are selling for similar priced that I'm getting ready to go to this listing kind for. I'm going to look through all the pictures. I'm going to see what kind of finishes they have and so forth. And so I'm going to dig into the property descriptions. Here are some of my things that I would encourage you guys as agents to do. You may get a call from somebody that's like, hey, I need you to come and look at a house either in Bates Hendricks or in the Canterbury area, or I want a list. Get in the car and drive to that neighborhood if you don't know it. You can't comp a neighborhood, and you want to be as smart as you are about that neighborhood. You will be able to get in a car and drive around and see, okay, well, this is where this house is. Does it look similar to other houses? Like, we all know that photographs are tough these days. Photography, the trick of photography is tough. And also you're going to get a feel for where there are natural boundaries in a neighborhood that you may not be able to identify on a map, right? So get in the car and go and do those things. And so that's one of the things that I do even before I go into a listing meeting. When I go into a listing meeting in person, then what I'm doing is taking that information that I've learned about numbers a little bit, and also just about finish of the home in general, right? Like, and then I'm going into a home thinking, I meet my client or my potential client, and they do a walkthrough of the house, and I'm evaluating in my mind. Well, first of all, before I do that, any questions about the numbers and how all of that works? Anyone confused on how that happens or what the value is or whatever with that? No? Okay, good. So when I go into an in-person meeting with listings and to give people comps, I'll be honest, guys, I rarely give people what I think an estimated purchase price is in my listing meetings. Now, there are some agents that really value that. I usually have an idea, but I can't give a good indication of what a house is really going to sell for until I've been in it. Because somebody might tell me that they've redone their bathroom and it might be terrible. Or there may be something wrong with, like it can't, there are a ton of, nondescript things that are, the livability of a home, the style of the home, all of the way it's positioned on the street, even just all of those things that kind of are hard to measure, or you can't put in, like, carpet in the basement. Is it shag carpet? Is it stained carpet? Is it finished and nice? Like, there's all these things that you have to know before you can give numbers. And I tell people, listen, I'm a numbers cruncher, and I like to be cautiously optimistic with numbers. So I can give you kind of that valuation range of what maybe we would have talked about before, but I'm going to go home and I'm going to really crunch numbers now that I've seen the property and done those sorts of things. Does that kind of make sense? Does anyone have any commentary or questions about how I handle that with people? No.
Do you still do your listing report? Like write up a listing report? Will you
I do.
show
I'm going to
that?
show you one.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So, so for my clients, what I do is when they have their Indie Havens seller, here's what to expect with selling with me. And the first thing that I do is that I promise them a listing report within 72 hours of our meeting. And that listing report is going to be a narrative of what I see for the house. Okay, so for you guys to know, that listing report isn't just to win a client. Again, I've got my marketing mindset on. I'm already writing the description of the house. I'm already writing what I think are benefits of the house. I'm already writing what I think are drawbacks of the house. So in a listing report, after I've seen some things, I'm going to go back and reference the numbers and, dig in deeper now that I've seen the house, and I can kind of compare it to photos and some other things of other homes in the neighborhood, level of finish and those sorts of things. That's exactly what I do. So my listing reports consist of, I can show you one, but I'll show you one here in a minute, but of like, the first one is just an overview of like, here's how lovely your house is, and I'm writing a narrative of things. The second thing I'm writing is I give them a list of all the things that I think are a benefit to their house. I love the light. I love the location. I like that it's in this IPS school proximity zone. I like, the way that it flows, like whatever. Any of the things. So like it's got updated kitchens, which are great. It's got soft close, whatever details you want to go into. I also give all of my clients a list of the things that are possible drawbacks of their properties. And the reason I do that is because it sets up expectations. So I say, hey, like your house is really close to the street and it has a back alley that runs past it with busy traffic, or you're in a floodplain and that's going to be a turnoff. There's some agents that just refuse to sell homes in floodplains still. I can't imagine that, but they still do, especially in this market. Or I think that your kitchen's outdated a little bit, and that's going to be a deterrent. One of the things I tell my sellers all the time, and even in all of my listing meetings, is listen, while this may be a seller's market, you have to put effort into this process. And so I'm going to work really hard to put the most effort into this process, but I need you to partner with me in the things that I ask you to do. And so when I go through and say drawbacks, I also then give a list of all the things that I would do for property prep. You need to paint the kitchen. We need to change some staging. You need to switch out light fixtures. And so then what I'm doing is imagining what that house is when it looks like that. And then I'm comping and saying, if you do these things, here's where I think we can sell your house for, because I've done the research for it. If you don't do these things, here's where I think that you can sell your house for. And then what I do is I send that to my clients or my potential clients. And then that's usually the, entry point of like, hey, here's what the conversation, let's have a conversation. Does that make sense? What questions do you have for me? I give it to them and then I follow up like 2 days later. And then usually it leads to a listing contract, right? So hopefully, right? So one of the things that I think is a real benefit here, and I'll pull one of these up here for you as we talk, is a real benefit to, yes.
Sorry, I have a question. I think for a lot of agents, it would feel uncomfortable to just come right out and say, like, here are the list of things that I think are wrong with your house. Like, how does that conversation usually go for you? How do you, like, has it ever gotten awkward? How do you navigate it? I mean, obviously you're giving it to them in writing, so it's a little easier than just like saying that out loud, but can you walk us through that conversation?
Yeah, I think that there's a difference between saying that it's wrong and saying that it's a hurdle or a challenge. I think it's all the way that you frame things. So, and you guys can steal this. This is what I tell I am a true believer that buyers have a threshold for hurdles in the way that they will approach a property. So a great example is this house that I sold. Gosh, I think it was on Boulevard. It had been on the market for 200 days with another agent. And I got a call from right across from the Butler Bowl. I got a call from the seller and she's like, we want to switch agents. Like, what can you do? So this is a perfect example for me to go in and say, well, here as a buyer's agent is what I see wrong with this property. Yes, the paint is outdated, but then also all of the light switch covers don't match and they're dirty and your oven is dirty. And like, so like it was a vacant house, like there's no staging. So here are hurdles. Do I have to paint something? Do I have to do something for upkeep? is the house dirty? I mean, a dirty house, like, pay to get them clean, guys. I pay to clean my houses. I don't know if any other agents do that, but I pay. I have a really 4-page, not kidding you, 4-page checklist for what my clients need to do to make sure if they're not going to hire a clean person, like, do it to make this clean. Nobody wants to see a dirty house, especially if it's vacant. Especially if it's vacant. And so I usually say, here are going to be some challenges. If I were in the buyer's perspective, here are going to be some things that are flags to me that I have to bring up, or that I'm going to notice with my buyers as we navigate this house. Does that make sense, Rosie? Does that help? Yeah. So I think
perfect.
it's just
Also,
the way that,
you said that's perfect. And I love that you hire cleaners. I think that is so phenomenal.
I will say that I've learned my lesson in that, to where I'm now just offering a credit for a certain amount, because I had some dirty houses last year, people, and they cost me like $500 to clean. And I was like, no more. But I'm offering enough of incentive that gets my people in there to do the cleaning. Yeah. Okay, so let me pull up
Lydia, do you have a question?
Yeah, go for it.
Go ahead
Lydia.
and unmute yourself.
Okay, how do you present that to a seller? Like, how do you tell them that their house is dirty?
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna pull one up.
Also, do you like charge for that later on? Do you include it?
No.
Do you include that, or how that works?
No, I do not charge for it. I don't charge any. I mean, my rate includes professional photos, Matterport, and a stipend for cleaning. Okay, so I'm going to share this screen with you so you can see. So this is one of my listing reports. You see it's really long. And so again, this is a property that I sold last year that needed a lot of work. But what I'm trying to do is, like, highlight, when was the house built? What are the details that I need to know? Like, and again, this helped, this section right here helped me craft my description. I was already writing the description for this house to sell it. And I also think that shows your sellers, hey, I know what I'm doing. And they get excited about hearing about their house, right? So property highlights, here's this, here's the possible, drawbacks. Kitchen size is small and needs updated. Kitchen appliance need updated. Furnace was installed in 98 and its past life expectancy. So all of those things and then here's what I do with my comps. When I look at what I do in terms of comping, so this is kind of a basic report, but I pull those numbers, I start to search and dig around, and then I put together just right there what the comps and pricing would be. I consolidate all of that for them. Now, I have some clients that are numbers crunchers, and and I know that going in, so I will do an appendix that has, like, here's an appendix with your sale price, or here's, or an appendix with, like, here are the comps that I think make sense, or I've narrowed it down to like 5 or 6 different homes that are similar to this home that I think are the right comps for it. We're running a quick CMA, and then I also do a PDF with all of the client listing sheets. They're really long, but then it helps them see pictures that are similar to their home. Does that make sense? Okay. So I present that written report to them. Here's the other great thing about doing something in writing. Then when your agents, don't lie, I saw you do the, you did see me doing the cleaning. Sorry, Andy, I just saw that. Andy can tell you that funny story when we were getting ready for things. But one of the nice things about that report is that then it's a reference point for all of us to be on the same page. I think in a listing meeting, it is really appropriate for you to ask your clients, what are your goals for this? And if they say, if this house is going to sell for $255 and you're like, we really think it can sell for $300,000. Okay, well, help me understand what you think is about that. And I'm not going to be like, ooh, it's not going to sell for that. I'm going to say, I'm not sure if that's necessarily where I would price things. Let me go back and really work on the numbers and show you why. I think in the moment, if you say no to somebody, or if you're having to correct them in the moment, they're emotional. Everybody's emotional about where they live. And so it's really important to be able to measure that emotion. And I think having things in writing, I've had multiple clients that, you know, as we've started to get into the process of doing things, they said, well, we're gonna list for this much. I'm like, yeah, but I need you to do the things that are on the list of some, you know, the work that you need to do for your house. So in that last report that I showed you, it didn't have a list because there was so much stuff on the list that needed to be done that I made a separate Excel spreadsheet that had, and then I helped to manage kind of all of that of like, here's who I think you should hire to do this. You know, it was a lot more of a hands-on project for me. And so that's kind of how I work that. But having something in writing is always fantastic because then that's your reference point. And if people get mad at you and say, hey, you know, like whatever, well, I asked you to do this thing. Okay, so I want to address as well, what happens when clients want to list higher than what you have told them to list for? You know, that's, I think, a really tough thing right now. Clients have expectations. It is the client's choice to list for whatever they want to list for. And you as their agent, if you guys are fresh out of training, you know that they really set the price. You don't. And so I can remember a house that I had on 39th and Broadway where I said, hey, your house is going to sell. I think the right price for your house is $369. And I think that we're going to sell for that. And they said, man, we really think it's $389 based on everything else. And I said, you know what? And they were friends of mine. I said, guys, if we need to go through that process to list it, this is your decision when it's all said and done. These are my recommendations. And if you want to do that, let's do it. And we listed it for $389. And what I did is said, but here's what I want to do. Let's have a plan for what price reduction might look like. Let's have some measured expectations on that. We listed for $389. The house sold for $367. So, and it sat on the market 3 weeks longer than it needed to, in my opinion. And we probably could have sold it for more had we listed for $369 in the market we were in, because it probably would have bumped up to $375 because the house was awesome. But we had just overshot it. But that was their choice. And they knew up front, if you guys want to do that, I 100% support, like, I will do what you want. My job is to work for you. And it will not impact the way that I do my work for you. It won't impact how I prepare your property. It won't impact how I market it. It won't impact my tone or anything like that. I'm on board. Let's do it. And so I think that there's that as well for your clients, you know, like they're in the driver's seat in this, and there's a lot more buy-in. If they're adamant, you're going to have to go through the paces with them sometimes. And that's just good customer service, right? And I also didn't look at my clients after it sold for the price that they said, that I said it was going to sell for, pretty much, and say, I told you so. I just let it be what it was, you know? Okay. Questions about that scenario or how to manage expectations in that capacity?
I'm going to kick it back to something you said earlier. So I know a lot of agents who walk into that first meeting when they're in the client's house, they bring the listing contract with them and like have the client sign then. And your approach is very different, that you say, okay, after this meeting in 72 hours, I'll have a listing report to you. And then usually 2 days after that comes the listing contract. So that's like five more days than some other agents do it, I think. And I guess I want to know more about like why you do it your way. Like, why does that feel good to you? And I really like your approach.
Okay, well, one, if somebody signs a listing contract with me, technically I have to have it in the ML or the BLC within 48 hours. So reason one. And I'm like such a rules person that even if I have it in hand, I can't not do it. Like I can't like I want to be, you know, like on point with that. So there's, I think, one thing with that. I think in the past, before that rule was rolled out, I used to send a listing contract, but this is what I tell my clients is that I think that having a realtor is kind of like dating, especially if you're working with buyers. Like you got to like the person you're spending time with, because if it's a bad experience, like that's fine. So for me, it just has always felt like I take on a large burden when I have clients of making sure that I serve them really well. And me doing the listing report is actually me serving them well and getting my mind around something. If I just go in and start spouting off numbers and saying, yeah, I think this is going to work, I personally don't feel confident with that. I have no agents that I will tell you, like Kelly Lavengood, one of the things that she's really good at is probably being able to give you a little bit of a price range. And that's one of the things that she does in a meeting. And I'll give people a price range and talk a little bit about like, maybe that, but let's go back. I always have the caveat of let me go back and see those things. Kelly's been in the business for 16 years and a good gauge of those things. So, but I think she's also willing to tell people, no, it's not going to sell for that in that time. I think for me, I want to make sure that I've done my due diligence. And so that's why I do things. I think it also shows, I mean, my clients are getting the written report without hiring me. And so could they go to somebody else and list? For sure. Are they going to get the kind of service that they get from me? Probably not. And so I'm also going to back it up with all the little things that, you know, I do as a listing agent of how I present a home, what it means to soft stage. I mean, I do a lot for my listings, probably more than most people would tell me that I should do, but it is really important to me. My goals are that, yes, I sell a home when I'm listing it, but my goal is to build a reputation in the city that every time somebody sees one of my listings, agents know this is going to be a ball. I can't wait to show an Indy Havens listing. I can't wait. It's going to be clean. It's going to be priced well. It's going to have all the information. I'm going to equip my buying agents to be champions for their clients. And then they're going to have a good experience with me. I want people to just be eager that, like, if they were to say, oh, I want to go check that out just because it's an Indy Havens listing. That to me is kind of how I feel about that.
God, that's so cool.
This is true. Thanks, Andy. You know, I'm just on point. So like, I mean, I hire a stager, but then I'm like, I'd like to switch out the pillows. That's why I have a warehouse full of pillows, you guys. Thanks. Okay. So let's see what my other notes here. I think also, so just back to this written report, I think that it's helpful too, because when you're doing a written report, you're already getting the information that you need in terms of like how you're going to support appraisal, right? So like once you start to develop this identity and this, you know, kind of like build out this home and like all the things about it, then I've got something that says like, okay, here I can send this off to the appraiser as soon as possible, or here I can write this marketing, you know, copy for this. And so again, you don't have to do it that way. It's probably overkill. I don't know if my clients read it. I had one client who called me and was like, well, I don't think we should reduce the price. Tell me why. And I was like, well, if you look back in your listing contract, this is why I think we should do that. I will say though that, you know, like I don't often have price reductions. And I'm not one of those agents either that undersells a house to get into a bidding war. So here's another thing that I would just encourage you guys to do. There will be some agents, I know of some in Midtown, who price a house a little bit less because they want to have a ton more activity and their client to feel way better about the experience. It's kind of a little bit of a manipulation of things. And I can't tell you how frustrating it is to be on the buy side and to give somebody a clean, full price offer and it not be accepted. And it'd be the only offer. But it'd be like, well, you know, we want to kind of wait a little bit. If you didn't want to sell it for that price, do not list it for that price. Because I think it's going to piss people off, to be honest. I know it's like, my buyers have made an investment in this and now they're doing their best foot forward to start. There's no other offers on the table and you get a full price offer and you still don't want to accept it. Like, that's not serving your seller then. Like something's amiss with that. And it makes me look terrible in front of my buyer. And literally, I'm going to say, well, I have no idea. I mean, I just had that situation recently happen with a house. So in that capacity, I would also say like, there's a way to find a sweet spot for people as well. So, okay, so I just talked a lot and I want to make sure that you guys get what you want from this training, even if it's the mechanics of being in my board or matrix, or if you have other questions. So does anyone have any questions, things that they want to know, anything like that? Thanks, Britt.
I just want to say I love your approach. I love the integrity and the relationship building and just like the care and heart that you put into it. And I feel like I want to refer all my clients to you because I feel like you do such a good job. And
Well,
I'm probably a few years away from being able to fully emulate the things that you do and the knowledge that you have. And this has been so helpful and inspiring.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Thank you so much. I'm really glad it's been helpful. That's what I want. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, I don't want to jump in if someone else has a question, so like please interrupt me if you actually have a question. But Emily, I want to hear this funny story between you and Andy and what happened with the cleaning.
Andy was getting ready to show my house on Gray. That was like a blockbuster for the neighborhood.
It was the first house I sold.
It was the first house you sold.
Yeah.
And Andy, you can tell him what you saw.
Oh, we were running about, I don't know, 20 minutes early, and we happened to be in the neighborhood looking at the other one. And I had purposely set that one up as the last one because it was the one that I thought that he would like the most anyway. So I showed him a bunch of, it was fine, but I'd already seen that one and whatever. And I hadn't met Emily yet, so I had no idea who she was. I had no idea what she looked like, but we drove past the house and I'm like, I don't know if somebody else is going to be there or not, because it was unavailable right before that and whatever else. And I see somebody on the porch moving mop buckets in I think you had a bandana on your head, moving cleaning supplies out and a mop, I believe. And I just kind of looked, I was like, it looks like she's busy. We're going to go drive around for a minute and come back. And then a couple minutes later, we were texting each other like, so was that you? I'm sorry. Yeah, bye. Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. See you later. But yeah, it was pretty good actually. And then I actually met her, I don't know, a couple weeks later, I think. Yeah. But yeah. The houses, the three that I've shown so far are extremely nice, by the way. I will vouch for that every single time. They're great.
Yeah. So some people, I have multiple bins of like, does everyone have toilet paper? It's like the mom and me. Does everyone have toilet paper? Are things wiped down? Are there footprints on these things? Do we have are things symmetrical under the lights the right way? Like I just a little OCD about things. One thing I did want to give you a caveat on, which I said I would get back to real quick before we head off, because I know that I'm done with my time here, is I wanted to talk to you about a house that I recently listed that I overshot the price on purpose. And so here's these caveats to things, right? So I had a house, it's pending now. And it was a really great conversation I had with the buying agent. So smallest house in the neighborhood. Thanks, Crystal. Smallest house in the neighborhood, nicest house in the neighborhood. Okay. And there had only been 4 houses sold in that small area of the subdivision for probably 2 years. One had a similar price point, or it was the exact same floor plan. They're all Melody homes. If you guys know what Melody homes are, they have wood foundations. And the other one sold for like $40,000 less. So my clients needed a certain number, and we had a conversation where I said, here's a deal. There is not a house less than 250. There are 7 houses on the market that are less than 250 in Marion County, or not Marion County, in Washington Township. Your house is nice. It's in a great neighborhood. And so we had the conversation of, this is a strategy that we can take, but again, over communicating with your clients that this is a strategy, but we're going to have a problem with comps. I'm going to get some calls about value for sure. But I anticipated that. So actually the agent that ended up being the buying agent with the house right now, we're getting ready to close here in a couple weeks. She called me with the classic conversation, which is typically my conversation of, can you help me understand comps? I've run the comps, but I'm not seeing what you're seeing, which is always like my warning shot of, hey, I'm going to send you a low offer for this house. And so so we had a conversation and I said, you know what, Tracy? I said, I understand that we were like $35 above price per square foot than anything else in the neighborhood. I said, I understand that we are priced way higher per square foot in the neighborhood than others, but I wouldn't be serving my sellers well in the current state of low inventory with a price point under 250 to not try and push it as high as I possibly can for them. Appraisal is going to come in. We're going to have to figure out appraisal for sure. I think we're well aware of that. My clients are well aware of that, but I wouldn't be serving them well if I didn't try and push it for them, in this market. And this agent was awesome. She's like, you know what? You're smart and you're exactly right. And even having that conversation where I didn't get defensive, like I knew how I was going to answer that question. And I knew how I was going to answer that question because I'd done the work with my client. We had the conversations. I didn't feel like I was talking behind their back or having to throw them under the bus or whatever else. That was just how I did it. And I wrote that report and they knew it. And so, we ended up a little bit lower in price, still blockbuster for the neighborhood. So do I practice scripts? No, I don't. So I've just had a lot of experience working with difficult people. But I will tell you that, Karen, from scripts, if you don't know how to say something, call an experienced agent. We will tell you how to say it. You start to learn how to speak within a few years of things. And so it never is hurtful to say, this is what I think. How do I say it so I don't make people angry, right? Or how do I say it where I can be diplomatic? And sometimes it means there's a little bit of conflict. I mean, like that, but you know what? Also, it disarmed that agent. And when we ran into some challenges, we had a really great respect. She told me the other day, I talked to her on the phone. She calls me just to like chat now. And said, she's like, most people think I'm a big bitch in the industry. That's what she told me. She's like, and I've learned a lot from you. And she's been in the industry for a long time. And she said, and honestly, you've handled this whole thing perfectly. Like I understand what your role is here. And I understand what you're trying to do. And so I was like, right, so let's meet in the middle. Let's figure out there's a way that all this works for everyone. Let's just figure it out, Yeah.
Guys, I just wanted to touch on that again, that idea of calling an experienced agent to ask how to say something. I know my job is different than yours, but I probably do that a few times a week where I'm calling, my people are Mark and Rex to ask them like, oh, okay, like I need to say this thing, but I don't know how to say it. That is such a normal and good thing to ask. So don't be afraid to do that. Mm-hmm. Thanks for saying that, Em. Folks, any final questions before we sign off? Okay. Thank you, Emily. Truly,
thanks everyone
so
for
much.
Listening. I hope it helped. I felt like I was rambling a lot.
No, it was really good. It was really good. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. No problem.
It was perfect. Thanks, Em. Have a great day, everyone.
All right, guys.
Cheers.
Have a great day.